Evening, I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Finance and Governance Committee for July 26, 22. And roll call and posting the agenda. Okay,
Member Turan,
here,
Chair Zaragoza.
here.
We have an announcement that Member Basua is going to be late for the meeting. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the City Hall Bulletin Board on July 19, 2022, and we have a quorum.
Thank you. So please show me a salute of our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moment of silence for a few minutes. Thank you. Okay. So, Madam Clerk, we do have one speaker. Okay, Jim Lavery. 3 minutes, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I just wanted to add some things when I spoke a few weeks ago about the pension obligation bonds.
Okay.
And what spurred me to come back was that article on the front page of the paper, I think it was a couple of Mondays ago,
Mhm.
that said the city was still interested in doing this. And I was kind of surprised because I thought this was a dead issue with interest rates so high and the risk of issuing, the well-documented risk of issuing pension obligation bonds. But I just wanted to make it simple. So a lot of people voted for Measure E. And one of the reasons, or the secondary reason, is because they don't want to see the city's name in the paper anymore for doing bad business deals. They said, we're giving you $50 million a year plus. I think the budget's $52 million in perpetuity. And yet you have to borrow money to pay your regular bills. These are not, the bills are high because of commitments you made mostly to public safety, but they're still within the normal budget. I mean, they're ordinary day-to-day bills. They're not anything unique. A lot of cities are suffering the same thing. So let's look at the numbers. I think when I listened to the initial hearing you three had, I think the pension obligation was $40 million a year minus the public safety levy, which is roughly $18 million a year. So that leaves you 22 million. Measure E brings you 52 million a year. I think that's the budget number. So that leaves 30 million. So how can you tell the average taxpayer person at home that you need to borrow money to pay pensions when you already have an excess of $30 million that you can apply to that? Now, I know some of that's going to be used for other things, but that doesn't resonate with the resident. Plus, you've underestimated, staff and the consultants have underestimated the investment risk of these bonds. That's the key thing. Now, say if you issued a $300 million bond, say that was roughly a pension, your unfunded liability. PERS, it just came out, they lost 6% in the fiscal year ending June 30th. So if you issue 300 million, 6% of 300 million is 18 million. So you would have had to pay, you thought your unfunded liability would have been wiped out. No, you would still owe $18 million. And so how does that benefit the taxpayers? I mean, I told you about other cities. I mean, I told you about Stockton, San Bernardino. Oakland too lost several hundred millions of dollars. So I think this idea needs to be put to bed, dismissed, do something different. It's not going to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And by the way, when it comes, that's only an option. We haven't even, we're not even there yet.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, city manager, Jim, go ahead, Mr. City Manager.
Just very quickly, with all due respect, I disagree with Mr. Lavery. So I look forward to the next time this is agendized and then we can have a discussion. But I fully disagree with him.
Yeah.
Just want to be clear.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, do any other speakers?
We do not have any additional speakers. Thank you, Mayor.
Item not on the agenda. Okay, thank you. Our next item is C1. That's a consent item. This is City Clerk, and this is the approval of the minutes that the Finance and Governance Committee approved the minutes of the July 12, 2020 regular meeting as presented.
I'll move to accept the minutes as written.
Okay, and I'll second that, and we'll go ahead and vote. Mhm.
So we'll do a roll call.
Is that working?
No, I'm sorry, it's not working. I have a first by Councilmember Tehran, a second by Chair Zaragoza.
Right. Mhm. So roll call.
May I please have your vote, Councilmember Tehran,
Yes.
Chair Zaragoza?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 2-0.
Thank you. Our next item is D1. This is Fire Department and the purchase order with the Stonewall bodies for uplifting 8 command vehicles in the amount of $869,632. And the recommendation that the Finance Committee recommended the City Council, 1, authorize the mayor to execute a purchase order in the amount of $869,632 for the uplifting of 8 battalion chief command vehicles by Stonewall bodies. 2, adopt a resolution declaring the intent of the city to be reimbursed for certain capital expenditures from the proceeds of the indebtedness related to the purchase of 8 battalion chief command vehicles. And this was again recorded under Measure M, a pre-recorded presentation. And we do have Councilman Basua with us. Council members, to run, any question this item or Councilman Basua?
Thank you, Mayor. Just real quickly, I know that this recently came to us for the purchase of the chassis of the vehicles. And just so that it's clear for the public, would we mind just taking a moment to remind folks about the process of this, of purchasing the chassis and then the upfitting, which is what we have looking at us right now. And then the staff report refers to an increase in the anticipated cost. And I'm wondering if we could just address that real quickly as well. We have our assistant chief here.
Go ahead, Chief.
Councilmember Tran, Mayor, and Councilmember Basua. To answer your questions, are there any specific questions or you just want a broad?
Yes, just a broad reminder and then just an overview of the upfitting and then the difference in cost from what was originally anticipated.
Okay, the upfitting of the vehicle, what we did was we purchased purchasing 8 Ford F-350 chassis. And then those vehicles will be upfitted by Stonewall with a body on the back that becomes the command part of the vehicle. That's what actually makes the vehicle. And one of the, this vendor was chosen because several reasons, but one of the main reasons is this allows us, it's a modular buildup. In the event of an accident, vehicle failure, or anything like that, that command section of the vehicle can be unbolted and put onto a different cabin chassis. So like we recently in the chief's report, we had a vehicle that was totaled in an accident. We would be able to take that command body and put onto another vehicle at a great savings of a complete vehicle replacement. Now, when it comes to the increase in the upfitting cost, that was, we originally made estimates of approximately $60,000 per vehicle based off a 2019 build of a vehicle that we did. Honestly, we estimated low, and we should have estimated closer to 80,000 for each vehicle. So that was a mistake on our part. That price has since gone up even more due to the a 400% increase in aluminum, I believe, increase in every other material, the increase in the chips the increase in the radio prices. It's just been supply chain, the demand, and then the lack of supply, and then just an overall increase in everything. So that is, that's where that comes from.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate the explanation of that, and then just the transparency on it as well. And I think the cost increase of everything is really worth noting for folks who look at the staff report or look at it in the future or in the near future and look at it in hindsight. Hopefully there's an understanding of this moment in time. This is the cost of these materials versus when the original estimate went in or when we were budgeting for this. It was this, let alone the fact that there was an estimate that was a little under what it should have been. But then, as you mentioned in one example, 400% increase in the cost of aluminum. I mean, how could you even factor for that, when you're
Nobody
thinking ahead
could
of
have seen
time?
that.
Absolutely.
But
So, go ahead.
I'm sorry, to give you an example of, we are trying to look ahead now that we've experienced this. We're looking at, for instance, 2 fire engines and a ladder truck. The price of a fire engine has gone up almost $200,000 since our last purchase. And so we're working hard to get specs developed and to get bids locked in on a ladder truck as well before that goes up through, before that skyrockets. So we have we've seen and we're living it, and we're doing our best to mitigate this and not allow this to happen again in the future.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate the explanation.
Chief,
Yes, sir.
let me follow up a little bit on that. My understanding that that's going to be a command post unit.
Yes.
And also one of the things that I was reading here is that it's going to have the capability of changing the sequence and the traffic lights as you're going from point A to point B. Is that correct?
That's correct. We have a system, it's called an M-Track system, and that's GPS based. And that system talks to stationary points within the city at intersections that are M-Track enabled. And like, for instance, Oxnard Boulevard, we used to call that became a super highway for us. We could go code 3 lights and sirens up that, and it changed every light to green, allowing our apparatus to, move quicker.
Go right through.
And it's also safer because we don't have to go through intersections against red lights. Even though we do that as carefully as we can, there's always inherent risk with that. So this system is safer for us. It makes responses safer for the public, and then it increases decreases our response times.
Absolutely. One of the other things too is that cancer prevention equipment. How does that work?
The way these vehicles are built, it's not so much the equipment that prevents cancer. These are what we call a clean cab design. Right now, all of our fire engines, every vehicle we have, when we leave a fire, we have to take our dirty turnout gear, our personal protective equipment that has carcinogens and stuff all over them. We have to put them back in the area that we ride in.
Okay.
The design of this vehicle allows us to shed that or, take off that PPE and put it in an area that we are not riding in. It's a completely separate area in the back. There is no pass through or anything like that. And our idea is for all of our fire engines and ladder trucks in the future to have what's the clean cab design as well.
That's excellent. And the other thing I think you mentioned in your report is that $329,306 dollars comes from the fire department revenue equipment, fire equipment or recapture.
Correct. That comes from reimbursement from our engines and personnel that respond to mutual aid fires throughout the state. Like currently right now, I believe we have 4 people that are deployed to the Oak Fire up in Central California. We do receive reimbursement for that, and we receive an administrative fee, and that's going to come from the administrative fee reimbursements.
So that's subtracted from the 869,000 or part of.
I believe that is, I would have to defer to Betsy on that one.
Is that right? Because that's significant too, that we're getting monies reimbursed, I think.
Yeah. Hi, Betsy George, Chief Financial Officer. Yes, we are going to use some of the wildlands reimbursement to offset the increase of these vehicles. But part of the next item, which we have Christian Sprunger on, is the financing of these vehicles. So
Okay.
we're not paying the whole 870,000 this year. We're just paying a portion of it. So
That's great. And I think it's important that the public understand that. Thank you, Chief. Okay, okay. So I'll make a motion to approve this item. Second. Okay, please vote. But first by Zaragoza, second by Basua.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. Our next item is D2. This is the Finance Department. Authorizing execution of delivery of schedule of property to Bank of America Master Equipment Lease / Purchase Agreement A 7667 for the financing and leasing of certain equipment. And the recommendation is the Finance and Government Committee recommend to the City Council adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of equipment schedule number 26 to Agreement A 7667 Master Equipment Lease Purchase Agreement with Bank of America Public Capital Corp. And the amount not to exceed $1.4 million to reimburse the city for the purchase of 8 Fire Battalion Chief Vehicle chassis and provide financing for the upfitting cost of 8 chassis, authorizing the execution and delivery of other documents required in connection therein, and authorize the taking of all other actions necessary for the consummation of the transaction contemplated by this resolution. And again, we do have our consultant that's going to help us out, Betsy, or do we have the consultant up there?
Yeah, thank you. Real quick before I pass it over to Mr. Sprunger from NHA, I wanted to clarify that the 1.4 million that we are requesting to be financed through the Bank of America equipment lease, 870,000 is the uplifting that we just had in the previous item.
Okay.
And then there's 530,000 for the actual chassis, which we ordered back in, I think January, February is when council approved that purchase order for those. So they're just starting to get delivered. So we'll be paying for both the chassis and the uplifting with the one equipment lease.
For the 1.4.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And we have our consultant. Go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mayor Zaragoza, council members, members of the public. My name is Christian Sprunger. I'm an assistant vice president with NHA Advisors. We're the city's municipal advisor. I hope you can hear me
Yes.
fine.
Yes.
Great.
Mhm,
I
mhm,
will share my screen. Bear with me one moment.
mhm.
Okay, I've begun sharing my screen. I hope you can see the presentation.
Yeah, we can see it. Mhm,
Great. Thank you.
mhm. Thank you.
Today I'll be talking to you about an equipment lease for those 8 battalion chief vehicles, item just discussed before this one. The recommendation for tonight is that Finance and Governance Committee further recommend to City Council to adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the equipment schedule number 26 to the city's master equipment lease purchase agreement, and in an amount not to exceed 1.4 million, and authorizing the other actions as needed to enter into the lease. I've paraphrased the language here on the screen.
Mhm.
To provide a little bit of background, the fire department, as you just heard, needs those 8 new fire battalion chief vehicles. The purchase of the chassis was approved in January of 2022. Once those chassis are delivered, the city will be sending them over to Stonewell Bodies for upfitting. The total expected purchase price of the chassis plus the upfitting is just under 1.3 million. This cost is higher than originally estimated, as was mentioned a moment ago, due to inflationary pressures primarily. The city has an existing master equipment lease purchase agreement with Bank of America. That's been in place since 2014. The city has drawn on that from time to time to finance the purchase of vehicles and other rolling equipment, moving equipment. City staff plan to utilize that agreement to finance the purchase and upfitting of these vehicles. The current draw is equipment schedule number 26. So every time there's a draw, it becomes the next consecutive number. So the one we did most recently was number 25. This one's number 26. It's going to have a 10-year term. So in the graph there to the right, you can see the blue bars represent the debt service on this lease. The final payment will be December of 2031. So that'll be during fiscal year 32. We expect to borrow just over 1.3 million. I know that the resolution identifies a not to exceed of 1.4 million. We typically have a little bit of wiggle room in there in case there's some unexpected increase, but I really don't expect it to go above just a little over 1.3. Bank of America provided a locked and fixed 10-year interest rate at 3.14%. This rate is locked and it's not expected to change before the loan funds and closes. The rate was actually locked after the agenda packet was prepared for this meeting. And so that sub bullet there that says that it's subject to change, you can disregard that. That rate is locked and fixed. This rate will require semi-annual payments of $80,000 or annual payments of $160,000. To summarize the legal documents associated with this, there are 4 documents before you this afternoon. The authorizing resolution, the master equipment lease purchase agreement, the equipment schedule number 26, and then the escrow and account control agreement. The authorizing resolution provides authority to city staff to enter into this lease and identifies the not to exceed amount of 1.4 million. The second document, the master equipment lease purchase agreement, has been in place since 2014 when it was approved by city council and executed. That document's not changing. It's just been included because it outlines the process by which these additional draws happen. So it's included for that reason. The third attachment is equipment schedule number 26. That identifies the specific terms related to this draw, specifically this $1.3 million draw. The version that's included in the agenda packet has a lot of blanks in it because there were a lot of unknowns when we prepared that packet. But since the rate has been locked previously to submitting the agenda packet, we'll be filling that in prior to going to city council. That document will have the amortization schedule, identifying the repayment terms and the prepayment options for this lease. The final document is the escrow and account control agreement. This document governs the process by which the city draws down that 1.3 million lease to reimburse the city for the purchase of the chassis that they funded up front, and then to pay for the upfitting of the vehicles when those invoices come in.
Okay.
With regard to timing, following tonight's meeting, we'll be working with Bank of America staff to finalize the terms and structure of the lease, and we'll be bringing the item before council on September 6th. So again, the rate was locked after we submitted this. So when it says late July lock interest rate, that actually happened a couple weeks ago. So the phase that we're in now is finalizing the structure and finalizing the legal documents. Assuming city council approval on September 6th, we'll work to close and fund the lease by the third week of September. Here is a recap of the recommendation for tonight. I won't read through it. I'll leave it on the screen for a moment.
Okay. Thank you.
And then happy to take questions.
Yeah, Christian, the question I have is it's a good thing that we locked this interest rate back and when we did. So what is the current interest rate and what's the savings if we had not locked it?
The rates, so they were up a bit higher when we first prepared the packet, and we're preparing to bring this before Finance and Governance. They were up a little bit higher, about 25 basis points or 0.25% higher. After we prepared the package, the rates had moved down a little bit, so we went ahead and locked the rate then. The savings on that, I'm sorry, I'm not prepared to give you an exact number, but an estimate would be between $5,000 to $10,000 per year. So over the 10-year term, between $50,000 to $75,000 approximately.
Significant.
That's an estimate.
So, and this is one of the, again, that we're going to thank our finance department and the city manager for doing those things. Locking that at that time is significant. Even 15,000 times so many years, is significant. So again, we need to commend our finance department and our staff for for doing that, which I think is important. And of course, because as initially the cost of the equipment went up because of the concerns that we had before that. But in the meantime, we're also saving some dollars, which I think is excellent. Thank you to staff again for good work. Council members? Councilman Bassoon?
Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to know what the life expectancy of these vehicles are. How often do we get new vehicles?
I think I will defer on that question to the fire staff.
The first.
Yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Basu, we can expect to get I would say a minimum of 10 years of service out of these vehicles. The command vehicle that was lost due to a traffic accident, that vehicle was 15 years old at the time, I believe, or 13 years old. I'm sorry. And we've been getting anywhere from 10 to 20 years of service with the number of command vehicles that we will have in our fleet. I think we'll be able to extend that as well.
That's great. And I do have one last question. As far as the amortization schedule, as far as prepayment options, are there any penalties for paying this a little bit sooner?
And it prepay is what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There often will be a lockout period. So typically 3 to 5 year lockout period, at which point there is a prepayment option. There is some flexibility. We could explore a no lockout period, but there would be some sort of premium that could be applied to the prepayment. So the prepayment could happen at any time at a premium, or we could explore just the prepayment at no premium after a lockout. Typically, we would do the lockout period, a 5-year lockout period with no premium. And so that would be the standard approach here.
So do we know if what it is?
The prepay, if any at all?
Do we know?
that,
Do we
Betsy?
know if we have one or not?
That item is one of the items that will be negotiated with Bank of America in August.
Oh,
That's as we finalize the legal structure and the terms. That's one of the items that will be negotiated.
Okay, so that's something that will come back to council.
Yeah, and if we want to consider the options, we can bring that back when we bring it to council in September on the cost of a no lockout versus the cost of being able to prepay at any time during the 10-year period.
No, 10-year period sounds good. I was just
Yeah.
curiosity.
well, I'm going to share something else probably with the fire department is if the term is 10 years and the life of the equipment is 10 years, as an example, it's still well worth leasing that for 10 years because you're using new equipment as time progresses as opposed to older equipment. So by the time we get to 10 years, we'll probably have to buy some more equipment then, correct? Potentially.
There's always that potential, but the modular design of these vehicles, which allows us to take that command body off, the command body is not going to get the wear. The vehicle itself and the components of the vehicle and the drivetrain and chassis, those will get the wear. If replacing a cab and chassis and putting the modular command
different-
section back on is a significant savings.
Right.
So I truly believe that what we're going with is the best option for us.
And it's a good investment at this.
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. That's one of the Councilman Turan. Mhm.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's worth noting also that, as is mentioned in the report and in speaking with fire staff, the vehicles that these new vehicles are replacing are still going to be in service. They're going to be utilized by other fire staff. It seems. Is that
That's right.
Correct.
Chief?
That's
right.
correct.
Good point.
So they'll still be in service even after, let's say they're around this age.
Mhm.
Also, they still have years of service life left in them that we'll be utilizing with other fire staff.
That's correct.
Thank you. So council members, any additional questions to Christian or the fire department? If not, thank you, Christian. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay.
you.
Council members?
I'll second.
Okay, recommend first by Basua, second by Turan. Please vote.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. Thank you, staff, again, for saving some more money. Good work. Thank you so much for that. Our next item is items for future agendas, council members. No, I don't have any. So we are adjourned. Thank you. And we'll be back at 6:45? Thank you.